Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, we're coming here with another podcast, so thank you for tuning in and subscribing. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe us on YouTube, hit that bell notification button. Also follow us on patreon.com/Chris Voss. Thanks to AT&T, the fastest download and upload speeds, for sharing with us to review the Samsung Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. Be sure to watch for the Note 8, and of course you get the iPhone at AT&T as well, the new iPhone 8 and X coming out. So thanks to them for supporting the show in that way. We're streaming this live on Periscope, so if you'd like to, courtesy of AT&T and their Samsung phone, if you'd like to subscribe to us over there, and of course you can subscribe to us on the Facebook fan page. And now that we've gotten over the plugs and everything, I want to introduce the person we have on the podcast. It's going to talk about some really scientific stuff, so get ready for your head to explode and grow some. Gain a few extra IQ points. I've got Maha Ashur, the Metawave Corporation co-founder and CEO. I'm not sure I got that last name right. Did I get that name right? Last name right?
That is correct. Perfect, Chris.
There we go, Maha Ashur. So welcome to the show, Maha. And you are the co-founder and CEO of Metawave Corporation. I'll give it over to you and let you tell us what that is.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for hosting us, and I look forward to introducing your audience to the first company that basically fused the divide between what we call the digital space and analog space. So we're now pushing intelligence, or what you call artificial intelligence, the AI engine. We balance it between the analog and the digital space. How do we do that? By building what we call intelligent metamaterial structure that basically shape the electromagnetic beam as it senses the objects or communicate with other devices, and also be able to steer the beam electronically at a microsecond speed, both in the horizontal and vertical direction. So for the autonomous vehicle market, we are going to build the first electronically steerable radar that can see at 300 plus meter object, detect them, track them, classify them, and alert the car and the sensor fusion ahead of time about the object that are in the far field of the car. Such sensor does not exist today, and this is why you see most of the autonomous vehicle speeds are limited to 30, 40 miles an hour.
So the distance is that factor in being able to see far ahead, and you guys are going to expand that. Is that correct?
That is correct. And then not only that, but also weather. If you look at the LiDAR sensor or the camera, they cannot see objects in bad weather like heavy snow, fog, as well as smog and sandstorm and so forth. The radar can see in all weather and environmental conditions.
Wow, so my car can be like a submarine, basically.
Well, think about it. When you are driving your car and you have heavy fog, what do? You slow down. When you cannot see, maybe you stop. An autonomous vehicle with our radar, it will keep going. It will not stop.
I've got images of Hunt for Red October in my head. One ping only. So they can go to, is it metawave.com or what's the website they can go to?
Metawave.co.
Metawave.co, and they can kind of learn. Now, I watched a cool video that's on your guys' website, and it shows the car moving along a bridge. It's identifying signs. It's actually identifying like cars and trucks. And I think it was specific vehicle types, like a Chevy Suburban, things like that. I think. Well,
types, I think it's a long stretch. So we can determine if it's a bicycle, if it's a motorcycle, if it's a car, a bus, a truck, as a sign, and a clutter in the surrounding. But I think the type of cars, that's a little bit too detailed. We let this for the camera to do that as the car gets closer to these objects.
That would be good though to have, because I don't want to be anywhere near like crappy cars. Like I don't want to be near a Chevy or anything, because those drivers, I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the cameras, they have typically a range of, for high resolution cameras, maybe 50, 75 meter. So as the car gets closer to this object, they can decide which type of a car it is.
So are you guys the only people that are doing the radar sort of technology for autonomous vehicles?
No, there are 3 different types of radar. Of course, you have the conventional radar today that exists on the market, and most of the tier 1, these are the suppliers to the car OEMs, they build what we call digital beamforming. And you can go and read about Elon Musk's, description of the extensive signal processing that his Tesla is doing with this radar. Basically what it is, it's an array of dumb antennas, static antennas, and most of the complexity is pushed to the signal processing. That makes this radar extremely slow. So we're talking now about millisecond delays in terms of steering the beam, in terms of shaping the beam, and so forth. Number one. Number two, these radars at long ranges, they don't see over a wide angle. They're very limited in angle because of the digital beamforming. Now, if you want this radar to mimic what Metawave is trying to do, they can, but they have to increase the number of antennas. And by that means they have to increase the number of chipset that they use, because each chipset today, it supports limited number of antennas. So it makes their scalability quite limited. And this is where we excel in that front, and that's why we're working what we call the tier 2, which are the radar chipset vendor, to help us build these radars based on their chipsets.
You guys, and from what I understand, when these autonomous vehicles go down the road, there are millions, if not more than millions, of data that it's collecting and processing, and it's looking at its whole world. I've seen some of the mapping that you guys use, or I don't know if you use it, but the mapping where you can kind of see like a virtual sort of matrix sort of world around the vehicle. And it's pretty amazing. But radar, that's pretty cool.
Right. So there is something what we call the digital map. So now you have, of course, the LiDARs and to some extent also the cameras are building what we call digital maps. So as the car drives around the roads, the car already knows exactly and precisely where they are located with respect to the digital maps. And by that, in terms of the clutter, in terms of the surrounding of the area, the car already knows that. What is unknown to them are the other objects that are moving or additional objects that are added into their environment. And this is where the additional sensors are going to play a role. For example, the radar being able to see these objects, both static object and moving object, far away. So we can detect the range, how far they are away from the car. We can detect, of course, multiple objects, not only a single object at a time. We can detect in which direction they are moving, and we also can detect somehow what are these objects and alert the sensor fusion. So now the sensor fusion is not really overwhelmed with what we call raw data. Raw data is basically if you just dump all this 360-degree view and let it figure out exactly what's going on. We tell them precisely in which direction these sensors should focus, because this is most of the danger that is ahead of the car.
Yeah. So what got you into this business? What motivated you to start this?
Okay, so I have been working, so let me tell you something about the fundamental, the underlying technology. So the technology initiated at Xerox PARC, basically, which is the Palo Alto Research Park, the research arm of Xerox. This is where, Steve Jobs came here and licensed the mouse. This is where most of the big innovation that emerged from the building where I'm sitting today. So Dr. Bernard Cass, who is my co-founder and CTO, initiated this project 3 years ago, and he built the first proof of concept. And then in December, Park decided to spin out the technology and asked me if I will lead it, because I've already worked with these intelligent metamaterial structure previously and basically commercialized it inside handset and the access points. So taking now what we call these active element and putting it inside a car or putting it inside, 5G infrastructure, it's not too foreign for me, because I'm a physicist. Also, I'm an electrical engineer who's been working in the wireless space for over 20 years.
That's awesome.
I know.
So how many lines of code does it take to do this? No, I'm just kidding. That's probably.
You know what? It's not too many. As I said, because you're relying on analog space. This is where I think people are missing the great opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
People are focused in the zeros and ones, codes that can manipulate zeros and ones. We have reached a point where you really cannot optimize that, even if you try your best. I'll give you an example. If you have a 20/20 vision, your brain doesn't do a lot of work to be able to see far away. If you have 10/20 vision, your brain can try to do all kind of processing. You will never recover your 20/20 vision. And this is where the analog space, which is basically the facade of the car sensing infrastructure is very critical, and we manipulate the electromagnetic wave at that front.
So I imagine you guys are going to develop this technology, license it to companies like Elon Musk company or other car manufacturers, or?
So we do not license. It's very
Okay.
clear. Startups never license. I licensed before, and it doesn't work for startups. We are building a piece of hardware, which is basically the sensor. So for the autonomous vehicle, we're building the 77 gigahertz sensor that is capable of doing all the cool stuff I just mentioned. And we are going, of course, to sell this sensor either to the tier one that will, in turn, that will sell it to the OEMs, or we can work with third-party manufacturing, companies who want to enter such a market and sell it to the OEMs. But today, basically, our partners are only all the car OEMs manufacturers and the tier one, the tier two, the chipset manufacturers. So we work with those two entities very closely.
So do you see radar being more widely adapted than some of the systems that are out there now, or becoming the dominant technology?
It is the enabling sensor for completely an autonomous vehicle. Level 4 and level 5 cannot be, put on the road without such a radar. As I said, because of the deficiencies of LiDAR and camera. So the radar is a key, and that's why I call it the radar era. People don't know much about radar. All what they know, the microwave oven. They think that anything that has a microwave word in it, it will cook you, which is not true, of course, because when you go through security, that thing that you go through is millimeter wave. Some of the frequency in your cell phone, in your computer are millimeter wave. So these are very harmless, frequencies, because you're not really sending it at a very high power. We are limited by the FCC how much power we transmit it. But again, the radar is a key missing component, and you can ask any car companies, and they will tell you this is what we are looking for.
So you guys do, was it 300 meters or feet?
Meters. We're talking about meters, which is not far.
So 300 meters. What's the standard now in the industry where most cars are able to see without your technology?
Camera and LiDAR are limited by, I would say, less than 75 meters, right?
Oh, wow. So you guys are really tripling that.
We are. Our radars today that can see at 250 meters, but they can see very narrow field of view, but they cannot see 120 degrees field of view. And with only 10-degree field of view, think about it if you're driving the car and you could only see 10 degrees in front of you at 300 meters. It makes your life quite complicated, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're enabling, a wide field of view and also being able to steer the beam in both horizontal and vertical direction. Now, another point that is very critical, interference. Now you don't see a lot of cars with these long-range radar with all these 77 gigahertz radiation. But as soon as you have all the cars doing level 4 and 5, everybody will be emitting such radiation. How are you going to solve the interference problem in order not to saturate these receivers? And this is where, when you have a very narrow beam, we're talking about a 1-degree beam instead of a 6-degree beam, a very tiny cone. And that's why when you focus the energy in 1-degree beam, you're able to go very far away. You are, imposing less interference to the surrounding areas, and also you're not exposing the radar to additional interference.
Wow, it's huge technology. Will I be able to pick up submarines with this radar? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you know that the military, they have radar that can see underground.
Oh, I'm sure. They're probably watching me right now through the closed window. Hello. What's the other question I have for you? So how soon do you see this technology coming to autonomous cars?
Okay, so the life cycle typically to place a new sensor into a car is not short, because you have to go through a lot of regulations, a lot of testing and compliance measures to meet all the automotive industry guidelines. So we are going to demonstrate the first electronically steerable antennas very soon. I'm not going to say when, but I would say very soon, and hopefully we'll be the first one to demonstrate that. And maybe 2 years afterward, we will have our first beta product that car manufacturer can mount into their cars or into their fleet and start using them.
Awesome. So now you say it's AI, so it's going to learn like AI?
Yes. And how do we learn? It's basically by mounting these radars. So we are going to have our own car. We will mount these radars on top of them, and also we will augment it with some, cheap camera, maybe a cheap LiDAR, just to complete the sensor fusion in the back and to verify some of our, analysis. Because what we have to do, we have to create what we call signatures. So object signatures are based on, of course, the scanning that we are doing in these 3D environments, as well as the polarization of the electromagnetic field. That's another dimension or parameter that we are, expanding. The velocity, the Doppler of this object will also play into account for these signatures. So, and these signatures, initially, they will not be very accurate, but the more, driving and the more data we collect, the more, smart that we can bring to this AI engine, the more accurate are they going to be. So
Wow.
our business model is to sell the sensor also augmented by this AI engine that will be improved with time.
Wow. It's just amazing the stuff that's going on in autonomous cars. I can't wait for the day that I don't own a car anymore and I just order one from my phone, or I say something to Alexa or Siri, and order me a car, and it brings around some sort of general vehicle, and I go to my place, and then the car is gone. There's no parking that I have to deal with, and
Sure.
then new car comes. I think that's the most greatest thing in the world.
It's a huge disruption. And not only that, from the economic point of view, if you look at today's automotive market, it's based on how many cars are sold. In the future, it's going to be how many miles are driven. And if we can enable the car to drive very fast, because now the car can see at 300 meters, we are doubling this kind of a market share in the world. So
Yeah.
It's a huge impact it's going to have. Now, we even haven't talked about the impact of 5G communication, not only from the automotive side, but in general from the consumer side. Because think about it, if you are in the car and you have this 5G network that are beaming gigabit speed to your car, you're watching videos, you're watching sports, you can do all these kind of cool things. And also you are able to let the car communicate with the service providers, with the ad providers, to basically expand the impact of this technology or this market into additional vertical markets.
So you're saying I'm going to have to call AT&T and ask for a bigger data plan?
No, see, this is where it is a key. So you asked a very good question, Chris, and I'm so happy you pointed that. At the end, if I want to have gigabit speed, so I can download videos, upload videos all simultaneously without paying an extra penny. So who is going to pay the price? Typically, who pays the price are the service providers, for Verizon's, the AT&T, because they have to deploy new infrastructure. But here what we're telling them, no, keep your current infrastructure, but remove these, I would say, digital beamforming limited arrays of antennas, and they are expensive. Remove them and replace them with Metawave antennas. This way you can able to basically make the beam extremely narrow. So when I'm making the beam extremely narrow, that cell phone base station is able to accommodate more users. More users per cell footprint is quite valuable for the service providers. Number one. Number two, because I'm also making that signal go much further away, the service providers now, they don't have to deploy new base stations. With the single base station they have today, they can actually meet the 1 gigabit speed, even if these devices or users are at the edge of the cell without decreasing the footprint. So
Wow.
from the cost perspective, it's going to be quite minimal to the service providers.
That's cool, because they hate spending money on infrastructure, that's for sure. You've ever lived in a bad area, been begging for stuff. So this is very cool. I know Elon Musk really kind of complains about AI and throws up a lot of warnings about AI. What's to keep my car from turning into the Terminator?
Okay, well, security, of course. Number one. Number two, you want the car to make the final decision based on its own sensor, not based on external factor. So there are ways you can have the car smart enough to decide whether or not the external factors are actually a foe. They're not really, reflecting your environment. They want to turn your car into a weapon, for example. So
Yeah.
you can actually stop that from happening, and you can hard code it into these cars in order to avoid such situations. So I'm strongly convinced that the car has to make up its mind just based on its own sensor and its own AI independently from external inputs.
Well, they really could use that in Europe, where they're starting to weaponize cars for terrorism.
Oh, absolutely. I think we'll have much less problems with this technology. We also haven't covered another important thing that I have actually worked on it for the military, but using other technologies. It's what we call non-line of sight. I'll give you a very simple example. If you are driving a car, or you have two level 4 cars, for example, in the future, autonomous vehicle, one in front of the other one, and let's say you have a pedestrian that is crossing the street in a non-crossing path. So the first car basically slows down because it sees that pedestrian. Of course, the second car doesn't see it, and maybe it gets impatient because it doesn't want to slow down. So basically it wants to bypass that car. Of course, if it does that and it doesn't slow down, it will hit the pedestrian. So you need to have a mechanism in place where we have to say non-line of sight object detection. How can the car see that pedestrian that is in front of the car or the truck in front of him? So here, actually, the radar can do that, and that's something
the radar would pick up that person.
Yes, non-line of sight object detection, radar detection, and that's something. It's our roadmap down the road.
That's awesome. Wow. Yeah, I can see how that would be entirely helpful, and have a different technology. I've seen these cars that have the cameras all around them, and yeah, the better this can get. How soon do you think? How soon do you think we're all going to be driving autonomous cars, and it's just going to become stupid to own your own car anymore and have your own driving car that you drive yourself?
I think it will come in phases. In my opinion, it will be more. I think Asia will adopt it faster because of the pollution and also because of their limited infrastructure they have in place today and the increasing number of car ownership. In general, in my opinion, I give it like 2030, 2035 because of the next generation. This new generation of drivers, they just don't want to drive. They would rather be on their cell phone when they are driven from point A to point B.
It's kind of funny. They're waiting like several years before they're getting the driver's license.
Yeah, we grew up driving and we enjoy driving, and actually we see the car as an extension of ourselves. But this next generation, they don't see that anymore. They care less.
It's always those millennials. So this is a pretty interesting thing. So, I mean, AI is there. We don't have to worry about the car becoming Skynet and whatever. My car talks to me whenever I drop it off. I turn to it and say, "I'll be back." I don't know what that has to do with anything, but it's amazing technology, the stuff that's going into it and everything else. So now, were you saying there's multiple uses for the product you're building where cell phone companies could use this technology as well?
So let me tell you exactly what is the underlying enabling technology. It's a technology that takes an electromagnetic signal. So if you look at your cell phone, it has a lot of antennas, and it communicates with the base station or with access point or with all these different devices over different frequencies. So you have multiple beams coming out and being received by your cell phone. So now the brute force way of doing these things is just to send the signal everywhere. Even if you are in a very small area, because that's basically where you are, your signal is spread everywhere. That causes interference, and the way how they resolved it, they said, okay, we need to have a mechanism by reducing interference or increasing the signal-to-noise ratio by using cool technologies like MIMO and so forth. So we're telling them no. Now the future of wireless is going to go away from that brute force way of building system. We're going to transition to a system where now you are squeezing that signal and focusing it to that user, directly, and steering it where the user is moving. When you do that, you are increasing the signal to your user. That means I can beam now 1 gigabit speed. I'm reducing the interference and so forth. So that's why we call it's basically the new paradigm shift in wireless in general, sensing or communication. So 5G is a very big market for us down the road when we build the sensor for the automotive sector first.
I'm excited to see 5G come out. I don't know how soon it's coming out officially. I think they're still arguing over everything and standards and things like that, aren't they?
That is correct. I think the goal was for Korea to release the first 5G network for their Olympic game next year. and the rumors is that they're not ready yet. In 2020, Japan is going to release the 5G network. I think we will see something there. And then hopefully in between, the standards will be finalized. And that's why actually another reason why we're not going full speed with 5G, because the frequencies are all over the place. The modulations are all over the place. So everything is going to be a custom-made solution for all these different markets.
I'll be excited to get faster speed on my phone, but I guess I'm going to have to wait a couple more years. So it will be exciting to have 5G. At least I think it will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember when we went from 3G to, I think it was LTE, and then it was really officially 4G. And I'll be looking forward to AT&T getting that on their phones as we review them. So what else do we know about what you guys do and everything?
So basically, as I said, we started the company in January of 2017. We closed our first seed round, $7 million. We were way oversubscribed in July. We're building the team, focused on building the first prototype for the automotive sensor market, as I said, very soon next year, and then go after the 5G markets. After that, of course, there are a lot of markets that rely on wireless technologies, and of course, we can tap into every single one of them in the future. Our key strength, because we are going to be the first one doing that, is going to be the patent, the IP portfolio. So we are aggressively filing IP, sometimes on a weekly basis, to cover every single aspect, from the antenna to the AI, to the integration into the system, integration into the sensor fusion, and so forth.
Wow. It's just amazing the technology that's out there and what goes into it. And we take most of it for granted. But I really do look forward to autonomous vehicles. I think it's going to be so great. It's going to be so great for traffic. It's going to be so great where we can maybe reclaim some of these, giant parking structures, or just parking structures. If you live in cities like San Francisco or New York, that paying for parking or trying to find parking is a freaking nightmare. This will make that all go away. I won't have idiot drivers that are either driving too slow or too fast or not signaling. Just recently, I had somebody pull right out in front of me, didn't even look about whether or not someone was passing through the right of way. Almost, took me off the road. Thank God I saw them and took evasive action. But the fact that I won't get killed by some idiot teenager texting on their phone because they're in an autonomous car. I hope I live long enough to see that. That's all I'm saying. It'll just be awesome. And
the cars who are going to be driving in conjunction with humans initially, it's going to be more challenging for them to make sure that accidents don't happen. But as soon as everything transitions to fully autonomous, it's going to be a piece of cake, because by then the AI engine will already have factored in the human, who is the biggest unknown on the road, and then after that, of course, everything will be very predictable.
Now, one thing that came around the autonomous car technology that was like the tough question is, how do you make the car decide if the car has to make a choice between running over someone on the road or killing its driver and taking evasive action?
I don't know. So hopefully you will never get into that situation, because if you are able to see very far away, you're able to avoid that, being that close and being in that situation.
So does that
absolutely.
And avoid that would make sense, being able to have a farther lead time in being able to anticipate a object or whatever. How would you deal with like, one of the things that when I was a kid, we used to live in a rural area in Utah, and about once a year, somebody hit a deer that you knew. And the deer, and I've experienced it, the deer will literally just leap right out in front of you. And there you are. You have no choice but to go through the deer. And do you guys anticipate or build for those sort of scenarios?
So again, I think anything that is such a short range, it's going to be dictated by the other more precise sensors, like the camera or the LiDAR, because these guys can really see things much better than a radar at a much shorter range. But I anticipate that these things may happen, and I don't know exactly how the cars are going to overcome that.
Yeah, some things you just can't stop. I mean, when the deer jump in front of your cars, there's almost no warning when they do, and they're so fast. we owned a courier company in Utah years ago, and when they would come out of the woods at full trot and jump right in front of the car, there was just no stopping them. But at least it will make it so that you have a lot more going on. So what else do we know about?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but if you have like thermal detections, like especially at night, I think during the day, more or less, you can be more alert. You can see if there is some moving object, live object behind bushes and which direction it's moving. So there are ways you can account for that, but I'm not really an expert in that field.
Can I get my car to have the radar know when my wife or girlfriend is angry when I pull in the driveway at home, and it can maybe send me to the bar so that I don't walk in the house? Can I get that kind of radar for my car? Because I kind of need something like that.
Yeah, that will be very cool. Hopefully it will never happen, right?
I'm always in trouble, it seems, so it'd be good.
Yeah, I know.
So this sounds like interesting stuff. I'm really excited about autonomous cars to come out. I think it's going to be an awesome thing. And now, is this technically a spin-off out of Xerox then, from my understanding, what you said?
It's out of Park. So we are an independent startup, but we'll exclusively license the technology from Park in these two big markets.
Wow. That's awesome. Will my radar be able to make copies for me using Xerox?
Well, we have to talk to Xerox, see if there is a way we can have a tunnel.
New Chevy Camaro, can you scan this document for me and get me across town? Thank you. And fax that while you're at it. Do they make faxes?
You know, we always talk about autonomous vehicle, but I will tell you, when you start having the V2V communication, V2X communication, and having all these cars collectively make decisions, I think it will be very, very powerful solution. And this is where the radar also excels, because we can build what is called multifunctional radar. That means a radar that can detect object, but since it's already there, it can also receive information from the other car and make a decision.
Now, if I'm robbing a bank and I want to, make sure that I don't encounter any police in my getaway, is that software going to help me, figure out which cars are the police cars, and maybe I should turn right instead of left so that I can escape with my money?
Well, I am pretty sure the camera will tell you which one is a police car, which one is not, once you get closer to them. As I said,
that's what I need for speeding. I need a radar that's like 300 meters ahead of me. That's like, slow down, quit doing 100 between here and California, you moron.
Well, I'm hoping that you'll be just a rider, so you're not going to get the ticket. It's whoever is driving this car.
Oh, that's right. I'll be like, it's an autonomous car. I'm not. Right. I'm just texting right now.
Exactly. Or
I do that now, but it doesn't work out well. So can I have that radar work for me? So I'm driving down the road, I can figure out where the next McDonald's is. Hey, Chevy Camaro, I need you to radar me a McDonald's sandwich, eh? Like find me a local McDonald's.
Yeah, so actually we can see the logo far away. We can tell you if we can kind of image the logo and tell you there is a McDonald's. But I believe that your digital map on board will know that even before the
well, right? That's probably good too. Yeah. So we can learn more about your guys' systems at MeadowWave.co.
MeadowWave.co, that's right, .co.
MeadowWave.co, and they've got some really cool videos. Even if you're not a super technology, super autonomous car nerd like I am, you can go to the website and you can kind of see how this works in true data with videos that you guys have on the website. And of course, I think it should be pretty exciting. And I look forward to my first autonomous car.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
My friends will say, "Hey, can I get a ride in your car?" I'm like, "No, it's autonomous." It's autonomous. That means just me, not you. Isn't that what autonomous means in the dictionary? I don't know. I went to public school. Betsy DeVos.
Well, autonomous, it means it basically drives itself. It makes its own mind. It doesn't really depend on.
That's kind of what I do now. I'm like, get out of my car. I'm doing this myself. So there you go. Well, so we'll check out the website and all that good stuff. It was wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Maha Ashur, from the co-founder and CEO of MeadowWave Corporation. You can go check out their website. And any last bits or pieces you want to throw in before we wrap up?
Oh, I just want to tell your audience is that I wasn't really a strong believer in this, but when I bought my Tesla, when I became the CEO of this company, I realized this is a good first step in the right direction. It's possible. And as a physicist, I know that we're not breaking any laws of physics here. So the future is going to be autonomous vehicle. It's not going to be the cell phone. All innovations is going to come from the car.
Cool.
That's for sure.
That is awesome. There was a time where I actually used my BMW to try and break the law of physics in terms of speed, and I have several speeding tickets to account for that. But it was a scientific experiment. I kept explaining to the judge, and he didn't buy it. So anyway, I've got to go do my community service. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank
so it was
you.
wonderful to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on, and we'll look forward to having radar in our phones, and I'll feel like I'm on a submarine, and I'll just be like Sean Connery of the Red October. Chevy Malibu, give me one ping, only one ping. I can't do Sean Connery impressions. Anyway, thanks for coming on board. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that bell notification button. Follow us at patreon.com/Chris Voss. Follow us on Periscope, where we're doing live. Thanks to our good friends at Periscope, and thanks to AT&T for the Samsung Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus, which we are using to broadcast live for MeadowWave. And also, I think that's about it. I think I ran out of plugs. Anyway, thanks for tuning in the show. We'll see you next time. Thanks much.